So really, you don't start to find...
The Prince of Wales is most at home in Scotland among the hills of Balmoral.
There is much more to it, of course, trying to stalk deer and so on than people think.
He hunts regularly, shoots a little, and goes stalking with zest, though preferring to detect the stag for others to shoot.
You get round there, you know, all these sort of things you learn by trial and error.
Do you have a sense of where, I mean, when I look out, I just see the hill. Do you have a sense of where the deer are likely to be from here?
Yes, because you see, the deer are very cunning of things, because they always choose positions which are out of the wind, in the lee. And they're absolute geniuses at finding the most sheltered spots. And so when the wind's in a certain direction, you've got, after a bit of doing this, you begin to realise or learn roughly the sort of places they probably will be in. And everything's controlled by the hinds anyway, because the hinds live, the female deer, they live in specific areas, and they tend to live right out. Even during the winter, they live out as high as they can. It's only really bad weather that drives them down, and they attract the stags, you see, this time of year. Otherwise, the stags are living in a gentleman's club the rest of the year. They don't have anything to do with them until the rutting season, which is the mating time of year, which is now.
So where are they likely to...
I can just see some, just see in the sun there, on the edge there, below those rocks. Actually, you might just have a quick look and see what they are.
For the prince, there is no conflict between hunting to kill and loving the wild.
What you want to try and do is look for a stag which is older. No, you don't want to shoot a young stag. And, I mean, what you're really trying to do, for all intents and purposes, I suppose, is act like the wolves did in the old days. You know, you look for the
weakest.
The weaker ones, the older ones. Otherwise, you end up with many more winter deaths, you know, and a higher mortality rate of calves and things like that in the spring, because there simply isn't enough food for them all to go around. And the secret is to try and balance the numbers with the available food supply. To me, having been brought up here, it always has been fundamentally home. To me, it may sound silly to say, but it's true in my sense anyway. Every tree and stone and burn and bit of heather and actually means a great deal to me. I mean, I associate with them and desperately want to look after it and care for it and ensure that somehow it can be handed on in the best state possible for the future.
That future is now clouded by the collapse of what had once been described as a fairy tale marriage. The separation of the prince and princess has been the subject of intense speculation. Sitting in judgment over other lives, some have blamed the prince, others have kept an open mind.
Do you believe that the breakdown of your marriage and the circumstances of its collapse has damaged you and the way you're seen and the institution that you represent?
Well, obviously, I don't recommend it to anybody. I mean, any breakdown of a marriage is obviously a dreadful thing, and unfortunately causes great unhappiness and consternation and everything else inevitably. So I suppose at the same time it's inevitable that in the wake of something like that you get all sorts of turbulence. I mean, I knew perfectly well. I mean, one of the difficulties I find about this life is the predictability of what so many people are going to say about anything at any time. And but I mean, it's difficult for me to know. Obviously, I would much rather it hadn't happened. And I'm sure my wife would have felt the same. It wasn't through lack of trying, both parts try and ensure that these things work. No, I accept that I'm sure there's a certain amount of damage. I mean, you can't avoid it with something of this unfortunate nature.
In the nature of the breakdowns of marriages that you refer to, separations, on the whole, do lead to divorces. It obviously is an option for you. How much is it in your mind? Do you intend to divorce?
Well, I don't think you'd really expect me to tell you what was in my mind. I mean, that sort of question, is very much in the future. And if it happens, then it'll happen. But I personally would, at the moment, it's not a consideration in my mind. And anyway, it's something that I think is very personal and private between my wife and myself, and that's how it will remain.
But you are Prince of Wales. It is legitimate to ask, I think, whether, if you are divorced, is it an impediment to you fulfilling your duty as you might have to do as king?
I don't see why it should be any impediment. But and that's the way I look at it. I wouldn't have thought so, no.
Loch Mich was a favourite haunt for Queen Victoria. The prince and his children often come here with friends of the family.
Do you like being with your children?
Of course I do. I don't know whether they like being with me. But what is marvellous is to see them develop and start to get good at certain things and develop interests and all that. It gives me enormous pleasure and satisfaction and pride, really.
Oh, horrendous foul! Oh, he's going to be a substitution here. All right, Rory.
Prince's two sons are like other children, except that they are quite different. They will inherit privileges and duties which will test them to the limit. Their father believes that they will need one quality above all.
Sensitivity to others, which by any definition is actually called good manners, which I think a lot of people have forgotten. And also, on the whole, do to others as you'd have them do to you, which is not a bad way of trying to operate.
The prince looks forward to their teenage years.
As they get older, there are more things that perhaps they, being boys, they could do with their father. And, I mean, that's, obviously more and more enjoyable. But I've always, mucked around with him a great deal. I remember when William was tiny, I used to, muck around with him as much as I possibly could.
No, because, please no. It's too...
Despite the anguish of a failed marriage, the prince and the princess managed to share the children between them without rancour.
God, he smells. He must be old.
No, I mean, as I say, we discuss it, but that's a matter for us, isn't it? It's not a matter for other people to decide how our children should be educated or brought up. But you can bet your bottom dollar they will all interfere and they will all say it should have been done this way, it should have been done that. But I mean, that's become a national pastime, this sort of prurient speculation.
Even at Balmoral, the royal family is under constant surveillance by the media. The prince resents the intrusion, longing for more privacy than the zoom lenses of a tabloid media will allow.